In this lesson, we'll work on controls for the character's torso. So for our chest and pelvis controls, we can work with a set of circles that we attach together. Let's go ahead and under the Create panel, choose Shapes, and we'll grab a circle and add that to our grid. Let's right-click to exit our Circle tool, and we'll press the Z key to zoom on in. From there, we'll grab our Rotate gizmo. Let's go ahead and press the A key to enter Angle Snap, and holding down Shift, we'll go ahead and just rotate this object up about 90 degrees. Choose OK, and with it still selected, holding down Shift, we'll go ahead and now rotate horizontally so that we are left with a wire sphere. Alright, perfect. So from there, we need to convert one of these to an editable spline. Let's go ahead and use the original circle. With that selected, we'll right-click and we'll choose Convert to Editable Spline. Alright, now we'll go ahead and grab Attach and connect the other two shapes. Let's go ahead and exit the Attach tool. Alright, this is going to work out well. Now with this still selected, let's go ahead and add this to a layer we'll call Controls. I'll create a new layer with the object selected. We'll make sure the default layer is active, and let's go ahead and name this Controls. And at that point, we can go in and rename this object to anim_chest01. Alright, now it's a good idea to go in and reset the X-form on this object. Let's go ahead and take care of that now. Reset selected. And we'll also go in and collapse the X-form modifier. Now what we need to be concerned with is making sure that this will tie in correctly to our FlexiLine rig. Now remember, with the FlexiLine, Y is pointed up. So what that means is we need to adjust the rotation of this object so that Y is going to be our twist axis. Right now, Z is the twist axis, so we can always adjust this by doing a few things. With the object selected, making sure we're using our gimbal coordinate system, we'll head over to our motion panel, and underneath our rotation list, let's go ahead and change our axis order. So we'll go ahead and switch this over to YZX. Now what we can do is go in and rotate this about 90 degrees in the x-axis. So you can see now Y is our twist axis. Let's go ahead and save these changes by freezing the transforms of this object. We'll go ahead and right click and choose Freeze Transform. Alright, so once that's done, we then want to think about an axis order that we can use to avoid gimbal lock issues where our animation tends to flip because of two of our constraint rings overlapping. Alright, so that can be problematic in animation, and one way to prevent that from happening is to choose a better axis order. So in this case, if we were to go to a rotation list again and scroll down, it might be best, considering the current orientation of this object, it might be best to work with something like ZXY. So you can see that as we start to rotate in the Y-axis, as we start to twist, it's going to control the other two axes. As we start to move in the X-axis, it's going to control the Z-axis, and the Z will not control any because it's evaluated first. Alright, so this might be really ideal for animation then. And it really depends on what's going to work best for your animation. You might find that another axis order would work best. But we need to be very careful when we switch the axis order. It's best to do that initially so that when you start to hook up the other systems that will be tied to your control rig, everything's going to work properly. Nothing will be changed in a way that will prohibit other systems on your rig from working. Alright, so with this object selected, this chest control, let's go ahead and press Shift-A and quick align it to the character's chest. From there, we can always head over to the Hierarchy panel and use Effect Object Only to move this up. Just for selection, just to make sure we have this at a good spot, we'll press F3 just to double check and make sure we like its placement. I think that's going to work out very well. Alright, so we can now turn off Effect Object Only. I'll press F3 again to go back to wireframe mode, and let's go ahead and clone this object and align it to the pelvis. So So press Control V. We could always rename it from here. That's going to be Anim Pelvis 01. All right, great. So let's go ahead and press Shift A and align it to our pelvis. We'll now enter Effect Object Only again, just to drag this down. Maybe drag it back. All right, great. Again, we'll press F3 just to make sure we like its placement. I think that's going to work out. All right, so now that we have our controls in place, let's go ahead and think about our color scheme. So for the center, we could always work with, let's say, gold. But for the left and right sides, we'll want to come up with a unique color scheme so that when we start to animate, we can always find those controls. It's just for clarity. All right, so with both objects selected, we can head over to our color palette and let's go ahead and work with gold. Awesome. All right, so they have been renamed. We've also reset their X forms and we've adjusted their orientation. So this would be a good point to just go in and freeze our transforms. When we Alt right click, we'll go ahead and choose Freeze Transform. You'll notice that yes, the orientation is fine, but once we use that Freeze Transform tool, if we were to go back to our Rotate list, you might notice that it's going to reset back to XYZ. So you just want to be very mindful of that. We could always go ahead and switch this back to ZXY, but when we add our center of gravity control, again, we'll want to freeze our controls and just go ahead and check our axis order. But we'll go ahead and keep it set to ZXY for now, so we could always keep in mind the axis order we'd like to work with. So when that changes, we know exactly what we need to choose. All right, so we have our controls in place. Now, the last step for this lesson is to go in and link our bone objects to these controls. And then we can go ahead and freeze those bone objects down. So I'll go ahead and grab the chest and link that to the chest control. We'll grab the pelvis bone and link that to its control object. So now it will follow. Again, after we have linked, it's a good idea to just go ahead and freeze our transforms. All right, so that's going to be it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll add our center of gravity control.